Hey guys, this is Armas from Speedemy. You're watching Advanced MySQL Slow Query Logging Part 3. In Part 1, we have discussed how to do the slow query logging properly and got a report to work with. Then, in Part 2, we went over the report and learned what are the most important bits of it. In Part 3, let's now learn how we can fine-tune the slow query logging so we're logging exactly what we want and when we want it. But first, I wanted to clarify on one point that I made in Part 1. I got an email from Rick where he asked if it's safe to actually run long query time equals 0 on a production machine. And it's a very good point that I should have clarified better. You should not run a server with long query time equals 0 for more than 30 or 60 minutes or until you gather enough of slow query log data, which is for me usually 1-2 gigabytes worth of data. It is not suitable as a go-to setting. You should only use it when you want to get a sense of the server workload at a particular time when you're measuring it. Otherwise, you should keep the slow query log turned off or set the long query time to 1-2 seconds so you're logging only the really slow queries. And now, let's get back to the slow query logging fine-tuning. First, here's some generic tunables that are available in all versions of MySQL. Min examine the row limit. This is used to set how many records a query needs to analyze before it gets written to the query log. By default, it's set to 0, meaning this setting is ignored. To tell you the truth, I never use this variable because I want all queries logged at a certain time, but you could set it to, say, 10 to ignore queries with primary key lookups or other really efficient queries. Just know that the final query log report will be skewed, as those queries will not be included in the report. Log queries not using indexes. That's to log all the queries that didn't use an index. If you are using a large long query time value, sometimes it does make sense to use it, but I tend to control things with long query time and just ignore this setting. Log output, keep it set to file. The tool we're using does not support reading from the table. And now, settings that are available only in Percona server and are inherited by MariaDB and WebScale SQL. Log slow verbosity. Log slow verbosity is how you control what extra information is written to the slow query log. You can enable a combination of microtime, query plan, and InnoDB separately like that. Or you can enable all three of them all together. What do they do exactly? Microtime enables microsecond precision, which these days is critical, otherwise query times will be misleading to say the least. Query plan enables extra information about query optimization plan, such as how many tables were created, what was their size, was it a full join, etc. InnoDB enables extra information about InnoDB, such as how many I/O operations were done, how many distinct pages query had to read, etc. Note that in addition to these three values, you can also enable profiling. However, be aware that profiling is really expensive, so you only want to enable that in production if the server is lightly loaded. Otherwise, use that in development to understand where exactly is the query spending most of its time. Slow query log use global control. This is another one of my favorites. Remember I said that long query time is a session variable, and therefore if you have persistent connections, for example if you're using Java connection pools, PHP persistent connections and so on, then changing long query time will only affect the newly created connections. Well, it gets worse. All of the variables I'm listing here are also session variables, so any changes to them will affect only new connections too. This is where slow query log use global control comes in. With this variable, you can make all of your sessions use global variables for slow log controls, rather than session variables. You can enable each control individually, but I usually set slow query log use global control equals all in my CNF, so it's always enabled on startup. You know why it's important to have it set on startup? Well, because slow query log use global control is also a session variable, and it will only have effect across all sessions when all sessions pick it up. So if you don't want to restart your MySQL server, set this using session variable today, and only start working on your slow query log tomorrow when all sessions will hopefully pick it up. Oh, almost forgot. Percona Server 5.5 and some versions of 5.6 did not include long query time as one of the toggles. So instead of using all, you may want to list all the toggles there like that. Slow query log timestamp always. You have probably noticed that by default MySQL logs the timestamp only once a second, not once per query. If you care about when the query started, and you should because when you're troubleshooting logging issues, it's one of the key things to look at, then enable that. I always do that. Slow query log timestamp precision. Additionally, do set slow query log timestamp precision to microsecond. Otherwise, the server will be using 1 second precision, which isn't really useful. Log slow rate limit and log slow rate type. Sometimes you have too many queries running on your server, or your server is too weak and you don't want all queries logged, because that impacts your server performance too much. On the other hand, by now you already understand that if you simply set the long query time equals 0.5 or 1, the workload will not be realistic, because the faster queries will not be listed even if all in all they contribute much more significantly. Log slow rate limit and log slow rate type were added to solve exactly this problem. With log slow rate limit equals 10, only 1 out of 10 MySQL sessions will be logged, but it will be logged fully. Well, I mean, long query time will still be taken into account, but we already discussed that it needs to be set to 0 for this to work properly. And if you want to change how rate limiter works, you can change log slow rate type to query, and rate limiter will log 1 out of 10 MySQL queries rather than sessions. I usually use it per session though, but whenever possible, not using the limiter is a better choice, especially if in addition to a general query overview, you're also looking to solve locking or deadlocking issues. In that case, you want to see a full picture. Slow query log always write time. Say you have enabled the rate limiter, but you still want queries that take a certain amount of time to be logged. Slow query log always write time is your friend here. Just set a value in seconds and you're done. By the way, you can use microseconds precision here too. Log slow slave statements. Queries executed by the replication SQL thread are not logged by default. And if you're interested in analyzing replication thread, you should enable log slow slave statements. In order for this to take effect, you will also have to stop and then start replication again, like that. Log slow SP statements. Are you using stored procedures? If so, log slow SP statements will let you control how they are logged. By default, all queries from the procedures are logged, which is my favorite way, because it lets you focus on the specific queries that could be making things slower, rather than procedure calls, which would leave you clueless. If you set this to off, then you will get behavior that's default in Community MySQL. Procedure calls will be logged, but queries will not be. Finally, if you set it to off no calls, then neither the statements nor the calls will be logged. Log slow filter. Log slow filter allows you to only get the queries that match a specific filter. For example, if you set it to QC miss, only query cache misses will be logged. Query cache hits will not be. Other filters you have are full scan for a full table scan, full join for a full table join, TMP table for temporary table used, TMP table on disk for a temporary table on disk, file sort for queries that used a file sort, and file sort on disk for queries that used sort merge passes, that is, a file on disk. So it's a useful tool if you're targeting a specific type of query and you don't want the query log to be polluted with other stuff. Finally, in Percona server, you have an embedded slow query log rotation. Use max slow log files and max slow log size to control it. I'm sure the names are pretty self-explanatory. So now you know why it's so important to log all of the queries, not just the slow queries, what really useful information you can get from Percona Slow Log extension, and how to process a huge slow query log with PT Query Digest. The report from PT Query Digest shows you what are the most important things you should focus on and what you can gain by optimizing a specific query. As I mentioned, you can download an advanced MySQL Query Logging cheat sheet, which includes all of the tools, commands we have used in all of these videos. Visit speedemy.com/logging-cheat sheet to download this cheat sheet. The link is also included in the video notes below. Now that we're clear on how to get a prioritized list of queries to optimize, the next step is to get into query indexing and other query optimization strategies. Don't forget to give a thumbs up if you liked this video as an encouragement for me, and share it with your community. This was Armas from Speedemy. I will see you soon in other videos.